Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that the definition of a woman, when referred to in law, is based on biological sex.
Well, someone who's been largely outspoken on the matter is Harry Potter author JK Rowling.
Given this verdict, we're asking whether the novelist has been vindicated and whether fans, she's become deeply, deeply unpopular. Is she owed an apology or not?
Well, joining us to debate this is journalist Julie Cook and commentator James Barr. Morning to both of you. Julie, let's chat with you first. Should fans apologise to JK Rowling?
I think they should. And I think this is a week of apologies across the board. I think it's not just fans to JK Rowling, it's lots of people in lots of places. But yes, I think she's been really vilified over the past few years. She's had horrendous things, she's had death threats, she's had her books burned, she's been cancelled, all for wanting to protect same-sex spaces and women's rights. So I hope that this ruling will just calm this all down now.
Yeah, but she has also said some pretty awful things, hasn't she?
She said some... It depends what you consider awful. I mean, I think most of the things she said have been about protecting women's spaces. For example, this all began when there was a women's refuge centre in Scotland where rape victims just wanted a place where biological men weren't going to come into that space. And that's where a lot of this kicked off. And she's been very vocal about that, being a domestic violence victim, having suffered a sexual assault. So I think it came from a place of wanting to protect women's rights and women's spaces.
James?
Unfortunately, that falls down there, doesn't it? Because biological men, as you put it, which are effectively women in this case, would be allowed to enter those spaces. So that doesn't really make sense. But ultimately, queer people should not be apologising to JK Rowling. She's not the Lou Monitor at Pret. I don't understand what she needs an apology for here. Now, I think we all agree that women should be safe. But when we look at statistics, of course, 98% of sex offenders are men, and the Supreme Court here are vilifying less than 1% of the population. Clearly, trans women are not a threat.
This video is sponsored by Saily. Saily is a brand new eSIM service app. What it does is get you a local SIM card that you can use when you're traveling, so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a text back home. They've got eSIM plans in over 160 countries and 8 regions. So pretty much wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? Well, all you've got to do is hit our link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan, you can choose the best time frame for you, and then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. Saily eSIMs only ever have to be installed once, so when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and just like that, you could be watching the GB News YouTube channel. You can be connected anywhere you go, and you don't have to deal with patchy Wi-Fi in your hotels. So get sorted for your next trip by downloading Saily using the link in the description below, and if you use our code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us.
I'm intrigued by your comment, James, because has the Supreme Court vilified them? Because the judge, Lord Hodge, was very clear, actually, in saying this does not put one group above another. He seemed to be trying very hard to move it away from what has been covered in all the papers, actually.
I mean, if you listen to the Good Law Project, I think it's quite clear that, yes, they have vilified trans people here because they have deliberately not listened to trans people in their ruling.
So what should they have done in all of this?
I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to be able to answer that question, but I don't think it's helpful to decide that trans women are no longer part of the Equality Act. That seems wrong. Really, this is just a smokescreen. And I think the main issue is that we're not dealing with abusive men. That's one of the biggest problems in the UK. Girls, women are not safe. Queer people are also not safe. Men can be terrifying, not all men, of course, but if you look at statistics, it is men that are the problem.
Julie?
Well, I think going back to the trans people not being invited or now losing rights, I don't think they're losing rights because they're still protected under the Equality Act. That hasn't changed. If you read the ruling, they haven't actually taken anything away from trans people by doing this. They've simply clarified what an adult human female is and what biological sex
So
is
why do you
in the
think
eyes
that
of the
queer people
law.
should apologise to JK Rowling?
I don't think queer people should apologise to JK Rowling. I think people who have been horrendous to her, who have sent death threats to her, who have called her all sorts of names, who've burnt her books, who've cancelled her, simply for having a belief that women have a right to same-sex spaces, to be safe from biological men. I think that is an apology that's needed.
I think anyone that does any of those things to any person should probably not be doing so. I don't think any of those things are okay. And of course, they should apologize. But the question is, should fans apologize to JK Rowling? And I think those fans are hurt and they have right to be hurt.
I mean, there is a sense in this, Julie, isn't there, that although, you know, yes, there is a degree of clarity on paper in all of this, certainly a lot of young people and a lot of people of the Potter generation, if you like, are not on board with this sort of idea. They want more. How do we put it? Fluidity, possibly, but they want to explore these ideas more, and rather than just saying everything is black and white.
That shouldn't affect law. You know, if people want to explore different things, if people want to be fluid, if people want to be, I hate to say the word, but more woke, because I hate that terminology, but, you know, if that's what people want to do, then that's up to them, but it shouldn't affect law. It shouldn't mean that women aren't able to have a changing room in a hospital if they want to get changed. It shouldn't mean that males, biological males, who lately we have had an increase in women raping people, you know, and there's a picture of a clear biological man in a pink wig. And we're all pretending this isn't happening. You know, women are biological adult females, and that should be protected. We've known it all along, and finally we know it in the eyes of the law.
James, last word to you.
I just think that blaming trans women for women's safety is like blaming a teaspoon for a flood.
OK. Well, there we will leave it. Julie Cook, James Barr, thank you both very much indeed. If you've got a view, gbnews.com/your say. In terms of health provision, where does this ruling yesterday from the Supreme Court about gender recognition, trans rights, all it's such a complicated issue, where does this leave something like the NHS now in deciding how they take their policies forward?
Well, you're right, it is a complicated issue. The ruling gives real clarity now to this issue from the Supreme Court. That's a good thing. And I understand from the Equality and Human Rights Commission that they will be following up with guidance to all public bodies. And that is obviously to be welcomed, that there is clarity for women and clarity for providers of services, which I think is really welcome.
We've been talking about this since 2004 in the Gender Recognition Act. I mean, 21 years there has been a debate about this in this country. Is it a shame, do you think, that it got as far as the Supreme Court, that it came to a ruling by a judge? Could this not have been sorted by Parliament, by politicians over the years to get that clarity, as you describe it?
Well, I think as a Labour representative, you expect me to say we're proud of the Equality Act. It was brought in under a Labour government in 2010. We're also proud of work we did to support people undergoing gender reassignment with the Gender Recognition Act. Those are both Labour pieces of legislation in 2004, 2010. And I think Parliament was clear in its intent. What we've seen, I think, in the last few years is some confusion around the implementation of that. And what we've seen from the Supreme Court yesterday in this long judgment, which obviously will need to be now carefully considered by government, is giving clarity to the effect of the Equality Act in 2010, that it has stood that test.
But in terms of the clarity that you talk about, I mean, in what sense is there clarity when it comes to the practical side of this? I mean, for example, single-sex wards in hospitals. I mean, what do you now do with trans women or trans men?
Well, let's remember that most people don't go into hospital who encounter the NHS. 90% of patient contacts with the NHS is through their GP, through primary care. I'm here today to talk about what we're trying to do with waiting lists to get people off those long-term waiting lists. Same-sex wards were part again of legislation in, I think, 2001. It was a 2001 manifesto commitment from the Labour Party to introduce same-sex wards. That was mostly done in hospitals today. You have largely a large number of single rooms. You have smaller wards for same-sex, for people to have dignity. It's also important that transgender people also have dignity and privacy. And in individual cases, that will be up to local institutions to make sure that they provide dignity and privacy to all patients.